This video focuses on editing an existing bio or also some things to think about when you're adding information to a new bio. Right now I'm on Sheldon Cooper's bio, and the reason is because we took the opportunity to use this fictional character and fill in every single field on the bio to show you what it would look like. So I'm going to go back and forth between the bio system. So this is what Sheldon Cooper's bio in the biosystem looks like, and then this is it being displayed on our Drupal training site. So if I go ahead and I can see that there are a number of editing buttons throughout this form. So the photo, actually the first thing you should know is that the credentials are in this name and credentials area, so you could put in the first name, the last name. There's really no reason why the preferred name needs to be filled out because it's the same as the first name, so in this case that's duplicative and unnecessary. The credentials, we don't use periods, that's an Academic Health Center style guideline. And then the URL name, you can leave that blank because it gets completed, auto-completed when the entry is created. Photo, you can go ahead and choose the file just as you would on most applications, and then you upload the file. We have written some help text throughout this biosystem, so be sure to take a look at anything in italicized font. It has the file types that are allowed at the extensions, as well as our recommended sizing of the photo, which is in this case 300 pixels wide by 400 pixels high. Having the same orientation for the photo and the same, actually the same sizing really helps the way that the staff list looks. The bio summary area has a few fields. It has the WYSIWYG, or the what you see was what you get field for putting in whatever is necessary for the summary of the person. There's also a mini summary, so I'm going to show you again what that looks like in the display. Expertise, awards and recognition, and then languages. Something to know about languages is that we don't typically display the languages unless there are languages in addition to English being called out. So here is that mini summary in the way it looks. So it's a different font, different color. People typically are not using that area, but it does exist if you use it. Here is what it looks like when there are languages other than English being listed. If it is just the English, we don't display this field. And just so you know, some of these fields do have their origins in when we first started the biosystem. We were basing it off of the fields that the physicians had on their bios. So some of what we have today is because of our history and how these came to be. Contact information has all that you would expect: email, office phone, mobile phone, lab phone, fax, the office location. Then of course we have mailing address. Sometimes people want to call out a lab address, and any other locations that they need to show. We have here the website title area and the URL. So in this case we use Big Bang Theory, and I'll show you that despite it being within this editing window, it is going to show up underneath the contact box. So this is what we consider the contact box, and typically you would not have this much information in here. But all of these links under here are located in different spots in the actual biosystem fields. So I'll call those out as we go along. You may have noticed on this that we have administrative assistant contact information, but it is located in its own editing window. Something to know is that our titles and organizations, we have a hierarchy to them. So we have primary, secondary, tertiary, etc., etc. I think we have 8 different organizations. Please do not use this additional titles or additional organizations area. It is no longer used, but we haven't taken it off yet because of historic use by other units, and we need to make sure that we clear that up before we take it out. In this case, it's kind of a bad example because we have made things up. But the way that we are requesting that you add the primary information is if you were to look up a faculty or staff member's page. So what you would do, I'm just going to use myself, I guess. I would search for myself, go to my page. I have my title, which is not, I would use my working title in this case, and then my college or department. Most of the time it would be professor, assistant professor, and then you would look for their home department, and that's what you would use for your primary organization, and your primary title is usually what comes up in search. What gets a little complicated is if they're a department chair or if they have a named chair, you would probably want to add that into the primary. But most people are going to have their academic title and their home organization listed as first, and then you would put in anything after that. So a center, an institute, a division, anything like that you would list after you've listed the primary affiliation. So that's the most important thing on that section. The most important thing on the education and certification section is that you should be putting in credentials of the degree, followed by a period, and then where they went to school. In this case, we have MD, Stanford University. We made up a residency name here, television residency, University of Santa Barbara. And the reason why we do that is because you'll notice here on the display that everything before a comma is going to be in bold. So that comma is pretty important because then everything, it just makes it easier to read. So for example, this additional screen actors training, we probably should add comma and then where it was done because it would make it a little bit easier to read. One thing to note is that we do have a clinical title area. So in this titles and organizations, I failed to mention this, we have television doctor. And in the display, you'll see that it's called out here. And so that is, again, based off of history with the Physicians Bios. We wanted to make sure that our clinical faculty members have a way of calling out their clinical titles that might be above and beyond what their faculty affiliation is with the University of Minnesota. Not very many people will have this, but we do have a spot for social media if it's their professional. If it's used professionally and not their personal, this is what they would look like, these icons for within the contact box on their display. I already mentioned administrative assistant contact information. We have a place for a CV or resume link or PDF. I say PDF because that would be my recommendation, is to always have PDFs, so you would navigate on your computer to find the file. And all based off of feedback from our units, we also added an option to add a link to a file. And this is if the unit is uploading PDFs to a Google Drive or something where the document itself will be maintained in a different area, but then you can use the link that it will stay current all of the time. And it's a one or the other. It won't. You can't do both. It's either the document or the link. Then you'll notice that we have a number of area fields, and we've made it a little bit easier to get to the information by having them in tabs. If we didn't do that, it would be scrolling forever. It already is kind of a lot to scroll through, but we try to make it a little broken up. The primary tab here is research, so you would go in and this research summary and interests, you can separate them with a semicolon. I think that's the way it's used. I should remind myself quick. So this, they didn't use a semicolon, but this one they did. And I thought that it was supposed to turn into bullets, but we'll have to look into that. There are a few things that we are still trying to work out, and so if you notice something that you don't think is quite right, you can email ahcweb@umn.edu and we'll take a look at it. Here we have a research lab link, and you would just put in the person's link to their lab, but you'll notice that you don't have control over what it says. It will always say research lab. We have space for the experts at Minnesota link that you can put in, a PubMed link, and then of course the big field that covers a lot of ground here is the publications, book chapters, posters, and presentations. If you have a lot of them, some people do, I would probably call them out with headings, and you can do that, or bold. And our team can help you with ideas if you have a lot of information for that area. Then you have clinical areas, and this is again from Physicians, how they had it set up. So specialties and clinics are database driven, meaning that you would start typing in, or actually it was easier if you start typing in the specialty, and then if it's in our system it would show up, and if it's not you would need to talk to us about adding it to our system. Same with clinics. For example, the university here. Yeah, so University of Minnesota. You can search through all the different clinics that exist, and if there's something missing, we can definitely add it for you. Clinical interests are all listed here with the semicolon separating them. Then we have media, or excuse me, academic. Going back to our display, this shows up as teaching. So the academic interest focused teaching areas courses. And then media and community engagement is something unique in that only one unit is using it and displaying it. So even if you were to type in information in community engagement, it won't show up. That is something to consider, and if you absolutely need it, we can work on a project to get it displaying. But it was a special case addition that we had after we had already put in the display on all of the other sites. Everything is pretty self-explanatory in terms of filling out the bio, but should you have any questions, please let us know, and those are the main areas that we wanted you to be aware of.